A nation comes to a standstill because he's here. Eddie Hearn is in studio with myself and Simon, and it's all going to happen in the next hour, maybe longer than the next hour. We'll see where it takes us. Eddie, you're welcome. Do either of you, first you, Eddie, do you regret any of the personal attacks that you've made on each other in the last few months?
There's a few wry smiles from both there. I think generally we acknowledge and agree with what we said. I didn't like what Simon said. I don't like as well that we ducked the media. I mean, we basically did every outlet available. We also did talkSPORT. I just didn't do the Jim White and Simon Jordan show, which I'm delighted to be here today to deliver you astronomical numbers.
Why didn't you come to us at that time? You've come to us today and it's your choice to be here today. We reached out to you at that time, but you weren't having it.
You didn't reach out that much, actually.
Yeah, we did.
No,
well,
not
once
really.
is enough.
No, I got asked to come on the talkSPORT morning show. I got asked to come on this show. I didn't like what he said. I took it personal, probably a little bit of ego, and I wanted to give him a slap.
Right,
really?
Well, let me bring the listeners up to date before you come in, Simon. What happened? Much of the confrontation over the last recent times came off the back of the collapse of Benn Eubank Jr. The fight was called off due to Benn's failed drugs test. It was eventually revealed that Benn failed 2 voluntary drugs tests for the female fertility drug clomiphene in the build-up to the fight. Benn maintains his innocence throughout, previously blamed contamination for the findings. Last month, the WBC reinstated Benn to its rankings, finding in their investigation there was no conclusive evidence that Mr. Benn engaged in intentional or knowing ingestion of clomiphene, and claimed the findings could have been caused by a highly elevated consumption of eggs. He's still under investigation by the UK Anti-Doping and British Boxing Board of Control, and as such unable to fight in this country without a licence. Simon, back in October, in your talkSPORT boxing show with Spencer, you called Eddie a coward.
Yep.
It wasn't a comment that went down too well with Eddie and his people. Why did you make that observation?
Because he was a coward. Not a coward in character, but a coward in his behaviour. There's a vast difference between the two, and I've qualified on a number of occasions. So if he wants to take offence, he should get over it. He's a big boy, apparently. And if you're a big boy and you don't like something that someone says about you, do 2 things. You either issue a writ against them for defamation, or you come and debate them and put them in a place. You did neither because you couldn't, and you ducked it, and you did it with other people. But the reasons why I said it is because he's got plenty to say for himself. He is the archetypal walking, talking, singing canary when it suits him. When it comes down to a situation where there's a scenario where he needs to put forward his best foot in a situation which is shrouded in inconsistencies, misrepresentations, a load of them by him, he should have done a damn sight better than do a press conference saying, I'm not going to say anything. And then goes off and flaps his gums about what he is and isn't going to do, and then tells the world that the media misrepresented him. It's nonsense.
I mean,
it's
Eddie,
nonsense.
at the time you said you wanted to, quote, slap Simon.
Yeah, I didn't like what he said because it's not the Simon Jordan world. I mean, we did hundreds of media outlets around that. The time of the press conference, we still had so much information to come from the investigation that we were advised that we couldn't say anything until that developed further. We then got to a point where things had evolved and we chose to speak to the media. I didn't want to come on the show. I didn't like what he said. And the key here is I don't think he understands the sport, the disciplinary matters, the procedure.
That's a big assumption on your part, mate.
Okay, I'll ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Through the whole process of this, what would you have done? Forget the press conference.
Yeah, I've heard that bit.
What would you have done in my position?
A lot differently to what you did,
Let's go. Let's go. What
I would have done is I would have taken the best course of action with best practice in mind. I would have looked at the fact, right, that I've got 2 contracts. I've got a contract with a fighter and I've got a contract with the opponent. And I'd have looked at what my obligations are under both. And I'd have looked at the situation, because you're quite clever, Eddie, you're quite smooth and you're quite manipulative. And what you do is you let the world see the things through your eyes. What you do is you say, I can't pull this fight. You could have pulled that fight.
I couldn't have pulled
Yes,
the
you
fight.
could.
No, absolutely
Eddie,
not.
are you telling me... let me finish.
Yeah.
Are you telling me you haven't got a contract with a fighter, Conor Benn, that if he brings himself into disrepute for a failed drugs test, that you wouldn't be able to drop him as a promoter?
No, and the contract... if you let me...
Let me just qualify a bit further. Right? So if you haven't got that contract, which basically means that most people with a sensible outlook would have a contract with somebody that if they bring themselves in the sport into disrepute and can't be fit for purpose, they would then be able to jettison that contract. Given the fact that you are a walking embodiment of all things VADA, right? Everything's VADA for you. You pulled Pascal fight with Buatsi because of VADA.
No, I didn't.
Well,
No, I didn't.
Demetrius
Again.
Well, let me go through the list of the. Let me go through the VARDA ones.
Demetrius Andre is the best option. Go through that one because you don't know what you're talking about.
We'll also go through the Joel Miller one.
No, go back to Demetrius Andre.
Okay,
because that's important.
Billy Joe Saunders,
not my fighter,
not your fighter, gets dealt with on the basis of VARDA tests that were failing him for a drug in Massachusetts that wasn't a drug that would needed to be failed in this country for an out of competition position.
Absolutely irrelevant. You do realise what you said.
Relevant.
Okay, I've got Demetrius Andrade.
Yep.
Frank Warren has got Billy Joe Saunders, who fails a VARDA test. Okay, the British Boxing Board of Control write to me and say, we appreciate that Billy Joe Saunders, without looking into the substance, without looking into the out of competition existence, and say to us, we do not acknowledge in any condition VARDA testing, only UCAD testing. Now, let me answer your point.
That's not true, is it?
Yes, it absolutely is.
No, it's not true.
Well, hold on. How can it not be true?
But it's not true.
When the British Boxing Board of Control have confirmed that in writing.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong to suggest, right, that a VARDA test or any private laboratory test that is sanctioned or under the accreditation of WADA, then, if it brings an adverse finding, gets then brought into the realms of UCAD?
No, you're wrong.
I'm wrong, am I?
You're wrong because it's in writing from the British Boxing Board of Control.
I'm wrong under the auspice of what you say, but everyone else in the industry doesn't think that.
This is where you fail to understand
your version of
the
it.
regulatory procedure of the sport. When you go back to the contracts state, and all contracts, under the sanction of the British Boxing Board of Control, we do not govern the sport. Despite you thinking, and many people thinking, we are boxing.
No, I don't.
No.
No, you think that?
No,
I don't think that.
No, Simon. The board govern the sport.
No, I don't think that.
Let me finish.
But I don't think that.
Okay, let me finish. No, but you don't have to think that. That's fact. The board govern the sport. They are the regulatory body. They are the disciplinary body.
Correct.
All matters regarding sanction of a fight rely on the British Boxing Board of Control. Contractually, in the instance of this, we have two things we have to consider. Number one is, if the bout is sanctioned by the British Boxing Board of Control.
Right.
If it's not, the fight contractually cannot proceed. Regarding the private testing between the two parties, the board cannot sanction the fight. Chris Eubank can terminate the contract. Chris Eubank chose to not terminate the contract. The board, who were made aware of the testing results...
On the 23rd of August,
No,
right?
on the same time as us.
Yeah, 23rd of August.
Okay, for the out of contract testing.
Yeah. You had a VARDA test on the 23rd of July, right? And you enrolled in me because you made a big noise about it yesterday. You made a big noise about Matchroom put the money up and Conor Benn put the money up to enrol him in a voluntary scheme. But it ain't voluntary, is it? It's a mandatory test as a result of wanting to be ranked inside the top 15 of the WBC.
No, but again, you're wrong. There's no cost of affiliating yourself with that testing.
You're the one that said it, mate.
No, I didn't.
You turned around and said...
We pay for private testing above and
beyond
beyond the UCAD layer. You're the one that said it yesterday.
You made a big noise because when you were on your little soapbox talking about how the world should be, you represented the way you want it to. So the 23rd of July, a VARDA test was commissioned on the basis of Conor Benn being inside the WBC top 15, not a voluntary test, a mandatory test as a result of that particular prerequisite.
You have to voluntarily enrol.
But it's mandatory to have it if you want to be inside the top 15 of the WBC.
You have to voluntarily enrol.
But you
Is
have
that
to,
true, though?
Yeah, of course.
But it's
mandatory to be inside the top 15.
But it's mandatory.
If you want to enrol, it's completely voluntary.
But it's mandatory if you want to be inside the top 15.
If you want to be, it's up to you to voluntarily enrol.
I mean, so here we are. You announce a fight there on afterwards, which you announce on August the 9th, pending a test result, which is not relational to... Hang on. Relational to the fight. You get the results back on the 23rd of August, right? Who knew on the 23rd of August? You?
The British Boxing Board of Control.
I never did. Who else?
The WBC.
Who else?
That's again, Simon, under the WBC testing program. Listen, let me speak. It's the confidential procedure, right? That has nothing to do with us. Under that is the people made aware of that test.
Did you tell Wasserman's?
No, because one, it was not in their jurisdiction of testing. Two,
but you made a fight, Eddie.
But the fight was already made.
Hang on, you'd signed a fight. Now you've got an adverse test finding.
That's it.
And you didn't tell Wasserman's.
Yeah, because it's
confidential. So when did Chris Eubank know?
It's confidential under the WBC program. This is what I don't understand. The British Boxing Board of Control knew about the test.
Yeah.
The same time. Just let me finish.
And what did you lot do?
No, but let me finish. Let me finish. Right? And from there, you don't ask the question.
I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
I
you
saw
did.
your interview.
No, you didn't.
It was so flaky.
No, you didn't.
You
No,
go.
you didn't.
It was so flaky
I listened
because
to-
you take your jibes at me, and then when you get the opportunity,
No.
with the governing body
I saw
who
that.
knew about it,
I saw that
the
rubbish.
same time.
I saw that rubbish.
The same time as me.
I saw that bait and switch what you said the other day, because basically you said he didn't even ask the first question I asked.
Not really.
hang
Not
on,
in your normal way.
Absolutely. The first question, because I know you've got this little conspiracy thing going on in your little mind. The bottom line is the first thing that went on, and I asked Robert Smith is, how comes you lot, how's this sport run? Is it the promoters at the top, the fighters second, the media third, and you lot at the very bottom? How does it work that you lot have gotten pushed around by that Herbert Eddie Hearn? How have you got yourself into a situation?
That's your world. That's
Right.
your world.
So
Contractually, and during the process,
so then I asked
we
Robert
go
Smith,
to the ball,
and you
regarding
heard him,
sanction.
right?
Go on, finish it,
And you
Simon.
heard him turn around and say, I said, did you get served something vaguely resembling a cease and desist from Conor Benn's lawyers about wallop? Hang on a second, there's an adverse test finding, you get back in your boxes. And the answer was, yeah, you could say that. So I said to him, hang on a second, how have you got pushed around by these guys? You're the British Boxing Board of no control. How can you possibly not be dealing with this?
Eddie, Simon, I tell you what, at 11:15 we'll take time out, but I want you to ponder this, Eddie. We'll come back with this, because as a gold standard boxing promoter, and you are you proud in any way of the whole Benn Eubank Jr. affair and how it was handled, particularly in fight week? How can you be? I want you to think about that, Eddie, when we come back.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.